Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Over the past few weeks, we've talked a lot about what can pull us off track: the stress responses, the social cues, the environments that can challenge recovery. But today, I want to flip the lens. Instead of only focusing on avoiding the danger side of the equation, we're going to talk about how to actively build the safety side. Because our brains aren't just shaped by what we fear or avoid, they're also profoundly shaped by what we practice. This is the neuroscience of hope, and it's about how we can train our brains to expect safety, possibility, and connection so that over time those states become our default rather than stress, craving, or shutdown. Let's go. When we're first getting stable, it's natural to focus on what to avoid: the risky situations, the stress triggers, the high pressure environments. That's important. But if we only practice avoidance, our brains are still wired for vigilance. They're scanning for danger, which means stress remains high. Over time, that can feel exhausting. The real shift happens when we start building positive circuitry in the brain, networks that light up when we anticipate safety, connection, and joy. There's strong evidence for this. A 2019 study in Nature Reviews Neuroscience found that repeated exposure to safe and rewarding experiences activates the prefrontal cortex and suppresses overactivity in the amygdala, directly lowering stress reactivity. Another study in Neuroimage showed that positive emotional training increased connectivity between the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, improving emotional regulation and resilience. And here's something especially important for recovery. Research in trends in cognitive sciences shows that when people regularly experience hope and positive anticipation, dopamine signaling improves, not just in the moment, but in baseline levels over time, meaning your brain's default motivation state gets stronger. From a neuroplasticity standpoint, this matters because the brain's reward system, including the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, is highly adaptable. When safe, rewarding experiences become the norm, the brain starts prioritizing those patterns over old, craving driven loops, literally making the healthy pathways easier to access than the harmful ones. There's a principle in neuroscience called Hebbian learning. Neurons that fire together wire together. This means the more often your brain experiences a state, whether that's stress or safety, the easier it becomes to enter that state again in the future. When you repeatedly experience safe, predictable, and positive interactions, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that manages decision making, self control, and long term planning, gets stronger. This is important because in recovery, we need that part of the brain active to override impulsive urges triggered by the amygdala and nucleus accumbens, which are heavily involved in craving and reward seeking. Your vagus nerve, the main nerve of your parasympathetic nervous system, is like a communication superhighway between your brain and body. It's constantly scanning your environment for cues of safety, like calm voices, steady breathing, and supportive facial expressions. When it detects them, it sends a signal to slow your heart rate, reduce cortisol, and activate the systems in your body that support digestion, healing, and rest. That's the opposite of fight or flight. It's the rest and digest mode your body needs to feel grounded. Then there's dopamine, which is often misunderstood as just the pleasure chemical. In reality, Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of motivation. It's released not just when you achieve something, but in anticipation of it. When you build hopeful routines and safe rituals into your life, your brain starts releasing dopamine simply because it predicts something good is coming. That anticipation keeps you moving forward. From a circuitry perspective, repeated activation of these safety and reward networks strengthens myelination along those neural pathways, improving the speed and efficiency with which your brain can access calm, hopeful states. Over time, safety and hope are not just feelings. They become default biological states that compete directly with the stress responses. So, how do we train our brains for hope and safety? One way is to deliberately rehearse safe moments each day. This isn't just a nice thing to do. It's literally rewiring your brain through repetition. Research and frontiers in psychology found that even short daily practices of safety visualization reduced cortisol and increased heart rate variability, both markers of nervous system calm. Microhabits are particularly powerful. According to a 2019 Nature Neuroscience study, tiny but consistent behaviors strengthen synaptic efficiency in relevant neural circuits, meaning your brain requires less conscious effort to repeat them over time. Connection is also critical. The work of Stephen Porges on the polyvagal theory shows that social engagement cues like eye contact, warm tone, and predictable responses activate the vagus nerve, signaling safety to the body. And in 2022, researchers writing in Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience demonstrated that observing others regulate their emotions actually strengthens the observer's own prefrontal amygdala regulation circuits through mirror neuron activation. Finally, celebrating small wins taps into reinforcement learning. Studies in neuron show that dopamine release during small successes strengthens the neural pathway that produces the success, making it more likely that you'll repeat that action in the future. In recovery terms, that means you're wiring your brain to keep choosing stability. Over time, this becomes a self-sustaining loop where the brain seeks out safety because it has learned that safety feels good. Before we wrap up, let's take a few minutes to reflect together. First, think back over the past week. What moments stand out as truly safe and grounded? In neuroscience terms, these moments likely activated your parasympathetic nervous system. Your breathing slowed, your heart rate steadied, and your brain shifted into a mode where it could process, learn, and store positive memories. Second, who in your life models the kind of recovery you want? When you observe them, your mirror neuron system is quietly at work, mapping their behaviors and emotional states into your own neural networks. That's why identifying role models is so powerful. Your brain starts rehearsing those patterns even before you consciously practice them. And finally, imagine adding just one more safe, predictable moment to your day. This is about creating a neuro association between a specific routine and a state of calm. The more you pair them, the more your brain will automatically move toward that state when you start the routine. Here's the big takeaway. Hope isn't just a feeling. It's a neurological process that you can nurture. Every time you experience safety, stability, and connection, you're firing up neural pathways that compete directly with stress, craving, and impulsivity. This isn't about thinking positive. It's about changing the structure and function of your brain so that recovery becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural way of living. The more you practice hope, the more natural it becomes, until one day you realize you're not just surviving in recovery, you're thriving. And that's not magic, it's the biology of hope at work. Thank you for listening.